Rihanna was fine. Well, as fine as any other young person. School was okay. It was a bit of a drag, to be honest. You know, what with all the learning, homework, tests, relationships and stuff. She tended not to rise and shine. For Rihanna, it was more like rise and wine. Rihanna had brilliant days. In fact, she had a special name for them. She called them Saturdays. She had okay days too, but some were just rubbish. Like terrible Tuesdays, for example, when she had double maths, French and PE. Nightmare. Then one day, out of the blue, Rihanna did some thinking. Some serious thinking. She thought about her life. She'd used up 14 years and figured that if she looked after herself, she could expect another 70, maybe? Her thought was this: maybe I should aim higher than fine. What if I started being extraordinary Rihanna? A Rihanna that made other people go, wow. And what if I started now? Wow now, but how? Rihanna pondered. Sure, she'd have to make some changes. She used her imagination. What would extraordinary Rihanna look like? And what would she sound like? What kind of attitude would she have? How would it feel to be my best self on a regular basis? Rihanna wasn't quite convinced, so she closed her eyes and ran 2 movies in her head. Movie 1 was a bit bleak. She imagined average Rihanna, and life seemed dreary. It was a black and white movie with not much happening. In fact, boy, was it dull. She ran movie 2 in her head. Gosh, this was full-colour 3D extraordinary Rihanna. A blockbuster of a life full of thrills, excitement, happiness, a great career, wonderful relationships, and bags of fun. This future was so amazing that her decision was made right there and then. She was going to be her best self. It was what Rihanna called a no-brainer. She wanted results, not excuses. And guess what? She only went and did it. Rihanna upgraded. She changed. She stopped trying to be like everyone else and started to be herself, brilliantly. Mr. Jenkins noticed first. He handed out some maths homework and predictably the class groaned. Jamie rolled his eyes. Sasha said it wasn't fair. Becky explained to Sir that she couldn't do it because she had stacks of other homework piled up. But Rihanna didn't groan. Sure, it was tempting, but she smiled instead. It didn't matter what anyone else was doing. It mattered what she was doing. She knew that Mr. J was giving homework, so she'd learn stuff, and that would help her get stellar grades. And great grades were key to extraordinary Rihanna's next 70 years. She'd run the movie in her head. She wanted that future, a blockbuster future. On the way out, she thanked Mr. Jenkins for a great lesson. And I'll be doing the best homework I can, she grinned. Naturally, Mr. Jenkins nearly fainted. He hot-footed it to the staff room to spread the news. I think Rihanna's been abducted and replaced by an alien. A hard-working, friendly one. Most probably from a galaxy far, far away. Rihanna's extraordinary decision to upgrade her attitude meant she sprang out of bed with more energy. She had purpose. Her aim was to enjoy the day. Imagine setting out to actually enjoy every day, even Mondays. She started to do things better than she had to. Homework? Better than I have to, tick. Attitude? More positive than I have to, tick. Manners? More polite than I have to, tick. Effort? Try harder than I have to, tick. Exercise a bit more than I have to, tick. Healthy eating, a bit more fruit and veg than I have to, tick. As her tick list got ticked, she felt amazing. Her life improved. In fact, her life improved very quickly. She'd raised her game. For 14 years, Rihanna had got out of bed because she had to. Her mum sometimes had to shout upstairs a dozen times or more. Not anymore. Because now, Rihanna had decided to get out of bed because she wanted to. Rise and Wine had been replaced by Rise and Shine. And because she decided to be extraordinary, she no longer stomped downstairs like a Tuzzlehead grunt monster. Rihanna was a pleasure to have at the brekkie table. Rihanna's positive approach meant she smiled more. Spooky stuff was happening. She noticed 3 massive things. Firstly, school was fun and kind of easier. She couldn't quite put her finger on it, but she imagined it must be something to do with the fact that when she did her very best, she accidentally learned loads more. In a spooky twist of the universe, the teachers became super helpful. Second, even Terrible Tuesday was cool. Oh my gosh, Rihanna twigged that it wasn't the subjects that had been getting her down. It was the way she'd been thinking about them. So all she really had to do was rethink her thinking. And third, people liked her more. It was like a superpower. It's not as though Rihanna had been short of friends, but the extraordinary version of her was getting noticed for the right reasons. Her teachers were commenting, her gran was super proud, her mum was delighted. Even Danny had noticed her. Yikes. Rihanna practiced being her best self until it became normal. In fact, after a few weeks, people started expecting her to be bright, cheery, enthusiastic and hardworking. She felt great, and guess what? So did the people around her. She wondered why she spent 14 years being average. What a waste. Still, the past was in the past. It was the bright future that counted. Of course, being positive didn't mean that rubbish things stopped happening. That would be ridiculous. It still rained, for example, and she still had to go to French, which she still didn't particularly like. But she invented a game that she played in her head. Rihanna called it the 90-10 game. Rihanna figured that 90-10 was actually a game of life, and it goes like this. 10% of whether Rihanna had a good or bad day was down to circumstances. This 10% consisted of stuff that Rihanna couldn't control, like French, or the drizzle, or homework, or Mr. Baker shouting at her in science. She figured that these things were going to happen to her anyway. She had a word for these things: life. The 90% was much more interesting. Rihanna figured that 90% of whether she had a good day or bad day was down to how she reacted to the 10%. So when she lined up to go into French, she thought, I can't control the lesson, but I can choose how I respond to the lesson. And silly as it may seem, she began to feel positive about it. Plus, it was only an hour and everyone can try their hardest for an hour. So she did. And when the weather was rubbish, like nearly every day, and everyone else was whinging, Rihanna applied the 90-10 principle. I can't control the weather, she told herself, but I absolutely can choose to be positive about it. I mean, some people live in the desert and would dance with joy if it rained this hard. And then there was homework. Oh boy, was there plenty of homework. And if there was an Olympics for moaning, Rihanna realised a lot of her mates would be going for gold. But not our Rihanna. The 90-10 game of life meant she couldn't control the homework. It was coming whether she liked it or not, so she decided to welcome it. She attacked her homework like she devoured her lessons, with energy and enthusiasm. Sometimes she even handed her homework in early, and it was superb. Rihanna felt proud. Mr. Baker shouted less, at least at her. Rihanna sat down exhausted. All that dancing had worn her out, but hey, it's good to dance at your 100th birthday bash. Rihanna looked around at the smiling faces. Her eyes sparkled. Her laughter lines were deep. She was surrounded by family and friends. It's been an extraordinary journey. The band started playing and everyone sang happy birthday. Rihanna felt tears welling up, but now wasn't the time. She blew out the 100 candles and her false teeth nearly came out. The room filled with laughter and applause. Quiet please, I have a few words to say about the birthday girl, announced Danny. He stood by his wife and held her hand. His thumb rubbed her wrinkles and then squeezed tight. He smiled at his beautiful wife. She beamed back. Rihanna's mind went back to her decision 86 years ago. An extraordinary decision, she thought. And an extraordinary life.